Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman, and just come on to do another video on Judges for Dummies. And in the last video, we talked about the Gideon cycle, and not to prolong the conversation on that, I read a few articles in Biblical Archaeology Review that proved to be really interesting and had some ideas that I may have missed, which are very important to this conversation and understanding Judges when you read it. So as we've said before in previous videos, there are probably 3 or 4 different time periods that this was authored, and it's a part of the Deuteronomistic history, and certain sections of it were edited later and some earlier in the collections of stories, so all from different points of view, skewing the theological history of the text. And we've seen that parts of it pro-monarchy, and some of the collections of the story may not appear to be so. A little bit of anti-monarch ideas in with it, but overall it's pro-monarch. And overall it's, especially towards the end of Judges, the last chapters, it's concerned with making King Saul look bad. And a lot of politics are involved in here. And also, especially with the Gideon cycle, here we have a glimpse of Israeli war tactics. So, some scholars will say, well, you know, they came in, sliced and diced as a huge army. Some say, nah, they were a bunch of people who were already part of the people living in the mountainous region, and maybe they revolted and became a tribe and started taking over some of these areas. But if you look, maybe it's a whole bunch of that. We never really see Israel winning a battle on straight land. They conquered the mountainous regions through deception, spying, genius military tactics, where they would break up the army, as an example, in 2 sections. One would lure the men out of the city, or the warriors or the army out of the city, and then the others would go into the city that was unprotected, slice and dice and burn, and then, you know, before they realized it, both of them would come together, and, you know, and then also, even on Jericho, the walls came down, and the harlot, they were spies. They went in, the red line was put out the window, not to say protect this house that was in the wall, but perhaps as the rest were going around Jericho, as perceived every day doing the same thing, some climbed into the wall and used that as a way to get into the city and bring the city down. So the Romans also did that much later, but it's just the enemy letting its guard down by doing that. So there's a lot of interesting things happening here, and politics. So with Gideon, the 300 lappers could have been a cultural way of drinking out of a stream. So here you had all these people come down, mixed, a whole bunch of people mixed, and too many people. So he decides to do it with a smaller army, better to maneuver, especially in a night attack. Israelis attacked by night quite a few times in biblical stories. And so in order to coordinate this much better, he did that. And also, lapping may have been a cultural, as I said, and in order to single out who maybe, this is just my idea, throwing it out, was Hebrew, would drink that way. The others were not. Now the Rebbe's commentary on this say that it's that these people here weren't bowed down to idols, so what have you. But anyways, Gideon was from his father was a Baal worshiper, as we've seen from the beginning, and this is a kick in the side. It's probably a kick in the side, and we're constantly reminding Judges that all this stuff was going on. There's chaos because Israel had no king, and there was no centralized monarch to control things. Politics. It's all politics. So here, the son of a Baal worshiper takes up arms and is called the divine. And what's that saying? That's saying that maybe no Hebrews or native Hebrews had a hero to muster up to do it themselves. So here, the writer who wants to get a kick in picks somebody outside of that group to be a hero and muster it up. And you see this throughout biblical history of this happening. So we see him using a small army, Gideon. We see him using military tactics, attacking at night, also spying on the enemy. That happened. And doing this all, winning the battle by an act of surprise. So what's that have to do with Saul? Saul was put in a similar situation, and the Deuteronomistic historian gave Saul the chance to be a Gideon. But because Saul got a bad rap in the literature, because he was in constant struggle with the government or the body of the priestly caste of the government, and their conflicts with the monarchy kept Saul from making negotiations with tribes, because you make a negotiation with a tribe, it's seen as selling out to God and all that, a simulation. Can't do that. So a lot of times they didn't form maybe strong alliances that they should have because of the religious branch of the government. Also, because Saul and Samuel were always in conflict, Saul was seen as maybe not the legitimate king. The historian, the priestly historian, has him being chosen by Samuel in secret, and then at the luck of a draw, he draws a straw, which, the only reason why he ends up being king is because he's taller, and, he's kind of seen as hiding. So here it's saying, we didn't have any real king, until David. But outside of all that, I believe Saul, even though he got a bad rap in the literature, just like Ahab, who did a lot to build up the nation, and I think, and some scholars think that Solomon, a lot of the work done by Solomon and things that are attributed to Solomon were really works done by Ahab. And the Hebrews were excellent horse riders, trained horses. They had a whole brigade of horse riders in the Assyrian army. So that's really interesting. So when it says the theological history, the retelling of history, the romanticized retelling of history, greatly skews what may have really happened because of all the editing. And when you're reading the text, like Judges or any book, think about the politics and think about the alliances that needed to happen between both the monarch and the priestly caste in order to survive and to unite the people. And they had a whole bunch of different ways of doing that, and it's a pretty interesting read if you do that. So hopefully these comments will be somewhat helpful. I'll post those articles below. I'm a member, so you probably can't get in to read it, but if you're a member, you could get in to read some of those, and which are fascinating indeed. So take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, somebody isn't thinking.